The chandeliers sparkled like stars in the night sky as guests in expensive clothes walked around with glasses of champagne. Victoria Chen's mansion was a dream come true for most people, but for her it was just one of many homes she owned around the world. Tonight, her huge ballroom was filled with the richest people in the city for her yearly charity event. Victoria stood in the center of the room, wearing a dress that cost more than what most people make in a year. At 32, she was one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country. Her company, Future Tech Solutions, had changed how people use their phones, and it made her richer than she ever dreamed possible. "Victoria, darling, this party is absolutely wonderful," said Mrs. Reynolds, the wife of a famous movie producer. "You've outdone yourself this year." Victoria smiled, but her eyes didn't. She was used to these compliments. They came with the territory when you had more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. "Thank you," she said. "The children's hospital needs a new wing, and I hope tonight we can raise enough to make that happen." That part was true. Victoria might be cold in business, but she believed in giving back. Even if these charity events also gave her good press and tax breaks. In the corner of the ballroom stood her newest prize, a Steinway piano that once belonged to a famous composer. It was worth millions with its shiny black surface and gold details. Victoria had learned to play as a child, and had once been good enough to attend the best music school in the country. But she left music behind when she realized technology could make her much richer. "Victoria, when are you going to settle down?" asked Diane, one of her old college friends who was now married to a bank owner. "You've conquered the business world. Don't you want someone to share all this with?" Several women in their small circle nodded in agreement. Victoria took a large sip of her champagne. This question again. It followed her everywhere. When would the successful woman finally find a man? "I'm perfectly happy focusing on my company," Victoria said. "Besides, I haven't met anyone worth my time." "You're too picky," another friend said. "There are plenty of eligible bachelors here tonight." Victoria looked around the room at the men in expensive suits. See show of this, owner of that. They were all the same to her. Boring men who either wanted her money or were threatened by it. These men. Victoria laughed. "They're only interested in arm candy or business connections. None of them understand what really matters." "And what's that?" Diane asked with a raised eyebrow. Victoria's eyes drifted to the piano. "Passion. True skill. Someone who can create something beautiful. Not just buy it. Maybe it was the champagne. Or maybe she was just tired of the same conversation at every event." But suddenly Victoria walked toward the piano, her high heels clicking on the marble floor. The room quieted as people noticed her movement. Victoria Chen going anywhere always got attention. She placed her hand on the shiny piano and turned to face the crowd. "You all think I need to get married?" she said loudly, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "Fine, I'll make a deal." The guests watched with wide eyes. No one knew what to expect from the unpredictable billionaire. Victoria tapped the piano with her red fingernails. This piano was played by masters. It deserves someone who can make it sing. She lifted her champagne glass. "If anyone here can play this piano and move me to tears, I'll marry them on the spot." There was a moment of silence before the room erupted in laughter. Everyone knew Victoria had trained at the best music school before dropping out to start her company. Her standards were impossibly high. "Oh, Victoria," Diane laughed. "You know that's never going to happen." "Exactly," Victoria smiled, enjoying the joke. "So maybe everyone can stop asking me about my love life now." As the wealthy guests continued to laugh and chat about the outrageous challenge, no one noticed the man cleaning up empty glasses at the edge of the room. He was part of the catering staff, invisible to the rich people who walked past him without a second glance. Raj Patel had been working at events like this for the past 15 years. At 35, his hands were rough from years of hard work. He currently worked 3 jobs: catering at night, office cleaning in the mornings, and driving for a rideshare company on weekends. Every dollar he earned went to supporting his mother, who was sick and needed expensive medication. When Victoria made her announcement, Raj had been picking up glasses near the piano. He froze for a moment, his eyes drawn to the beautiful instrument. His fingers twitched slightly at his side, a reflex he couldn't control whenever he saw a piano. Once, a lifetime ago, Raj had been destined for greatness. His music teacher had called him a natural talent, a once-in-a-generation pianist who could bring tears to your eyes with just a few notes. He had earned a full scholarship to a famous music school, his future bright with promise. But life had other plans. When his father died suddenly, Raj had to drop everything to support his mother. The scholarship wouldn't pay the bills or buy medicine, so he packed away his dreams along with his sheet music and found work that paid. 15 years had passed since Raj had last played a proper piano. Sometimes, when cleaning office buildings at night, he would find himself drawing his fingers across desks, playing silent melodies that only he could hear. "Hey, stop daydreaming and get back to work," his supervisor whispered harshly, breaking Raj from his thoughts. "These glasses won't pick themselves up." Raj nodded and continued collecting empty champagne flutes, moving silently through the crowd of people who looked through him as if he were made of glass. But his eyes kept drifting back to the piano, and to the billionaire woman who had made such an impossible challenge. Later that night, after all the guests had left and the cleaning crew was finishing up, Raj found himself alone in the ballroom. The other workers were packing up in the kitchen, but he had volunteered to do one final sweep of the main room. The piano stood in the corner, moonlight streaming through the tall windows and landing on its perfect surface. Raj looked around to make sure no one was watching, then slowly approached it. He didn't dare to touch it, he could get fired for that, but he stood close enough to imagine what it would feel like. From another room, he heard music playing. Curious, Raj followed the sound down a hallway until he reached a smaller room with the door slightly open. Inside, Victoria Chen sat at another piano, playing a complicated piece with perfect technique. Her fingers moved quickly across the keys, hitting every note exactly right. But something was missing. The music was perfect but empty. There was no feeling behind it, no soul. It was like listening to a machine play. Victoria suddenly stopped and slammed her hands down on the keys in frustration. "Why can't I feel it anymore?" she whispered to herself, not knowing someone was listening. Raj backed away quietly, something stirring inside him that had been dormant for years. He recognized someone who had lost their connection to music, just like he had, but for completely different reasons. As he left the mansion that night, walking to the bus stop because he couldn't afford a car, Raj looked back at the glowing windows of Victoria's enormous home. The woman who had everything but had lost something important along the way. And he who had nothing but still remembered what it felt like when music came from the heart. Raj shook his head. What did it matter? Their worlds would never truly cross. He was just the invisible man who cleaned up after people like her. Still, as he rode the bus home to his tiny apartment, his fingers tapped out a forgotten melody on his knee, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to remember what it felt like to play. Morning came too quickly for Raj. His alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., and he rolled out of bed with aching muscles from last night's catering job. He moved quietly through the small apartment, careful not to wake his mother who needed all the rest she could get. In the tiny kitchen, he made a simple breakfast of toast and tea before packing a lunch to take to his day job. As he ate, he checked the calendar where he kept track of his mother's medications. Today she needed to take the expensive pills that cost nearly a week's pay for a month's supply. "Good morning, Beta," his mother said, appearing in the doorway in her nightgown. Despite her illness, she still tried to get up when he did. "Ma, you should be resting," Raj said, pulling out a chair for her. "Did I wake you?" She smiled and patted his hand. No. Old people don't sleep much anyway." She looked at him with concerned eyes. "You look tired. Was it a late night?" "Not too bad," Raj lied. He had gotten home after 2 a.m. from Victoria Chen's event, and now had to be at the office building by 6:30 to clean before the workers arrived at 9. "I made your tea. And remember, take the blue pill with breakfast." His mother nodded, but her eyes drifted to the piano book that sat on their bookshelf. It was the only thing they had kept from Raj's previous life, a reminder of what might have been. "I heard you humming last night when you came home," she said carefully. "It's been a long time since I heard you make any music." Raj busied himself with washing his plate. "It was nothing, just a tune stuck in my head from the party." "You know, Beta, it's not too late." "Ma," Raj interrupted gently. "We've talked about this. That life wasn't meant for me." His mother sighed but didn't push. She had learned over the years that her son's sense of duty was both his greatest strength and his deepest chain. Raj kissed her forehead before grabbing his backpack. "Mrs. Lee from next door will check on you at lunch. I'll be home by 4 before heading to the evening shift." As he walked to the bus stop, Raj couldn't stop thinking about the piano at Victoria Chen's mansion. For the first time in years, he felt the old pull, the yearning to create music. He tried to push it away. Dreams were luxuries he couldn't afford. Across town, Victoria woke in her king-sized bed, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her head pounded from too much champagne the night before. She reached for her phone and scrolled through dozens of notifications, emails, and messages. Her personal assistant had already sent over the day's schedule, meetings with investors, a lunch with her marketing team, and a call with her lawyers about a new patent. Victoria sighed. Another day, another $1 million, but the emptiness remained. She got up and walked to the baby grand piano in her bedroom, a smaller version of the Steinway downstairs. Sitting on the bench, she placed her fingers on the keys but didn't press down. Last night's frustration still lingered. Victoria had been playing piano since she was 4 years old. Her parents had pushed her relentlessly, entering her in competitions and hiring the best teachers. By 16, she had been accepted to the prestigious National Conservatory, destined for concert halls around the world. But during her second year there, she had created an app to help students practice music more efficiently. When a tech company offered to buy it for 6 figures, Victoria discovered she had a talent for business that eclipsed her gift for music. She left the conservatory and never looked back. At least that's what she told herself. Now, 15 years later, with billions in her bank account, she found herself returning to the piano more often, seeking something that money couldn't buy. Her phone rang. It was Diane. "You caused quite a stir last night with your marriage challenge," her friend said without preamble. "It's all over social media this morning." Victoria groaned. "I was just trying to get everyone off my back about finding a husband." "Well, you certainly did that. Though I must say, if you're trying to stay single, setting impossible standards is one way to do it. No one at that party could play well enough to impress you." After ending the call, Victoria went downstairs for coffee. Her housekeeper, Mrs. Garcia, was already in the kitchen. "Good morning, Miss Chen. Would you like some breakfast with your coffee?" "Just coffee, thanks." Victoria sat at the counter, scrolling through her phone. "How was the cleanup from last night?" "Any issues?" "No, miss. The catering staff finished around 2 a.m. Everything's back in order." Victoria nodded, barely listening. Her mind was already on the day ahead. Yet something kept pulling her thoughts back to last night. Not her impulsive challenge, but the moment afterward when she had played alone in her study, trying to reconnect with the music she once loved. The week passed quickly for both Victoria and Raj. She buried herself in work, avoiding the gossip about her piano challenge. He moved between his 3 jobs, catching sleep when he could and making sure his mother took her medicine. On Friday, Victoria's assistant reminded her about the dinner party she was hosting that evening. It was smaller than the charity gala, just 20 of her closest business associates and friends. "The pianist you hired had to cancel," her assistant said apologetically. "His agent called this morning. Something about food poisoning." Victoria frowned. "Can we find a replacement? I promised live music on such short notice. I've tried, but everyone's booked." "The catering company said they could play recorded music through your sound system." "Fine," Victoria said, disappointed. She had been looking forward to hearing someone else play, to remind her of what music could be when performed with true feeling. That evening, as guests arrived at her home, Victoria greeted them with practiced charm. The dining room looked perfect, the meal was exquisite, and the conversation flowed easily among the powerful people gathered around her table. Yet she felt disconnected from it all, going through the motions. In the kitchen, Raj and the other catering staff worked efficiently, plating the elaborate dishes and bringing them out to the dining room. It was pure luck that had assigned him to this job tonight. The regular server had called in sick, and the catering company had asked Raj to fill in since he had worked at Victoria's house before. As he served the main course, Raj overheard the guests discussing the missing pianist. "Such a shame," said an older gentleman. "I was looking forward to some Chopin with dessert." Victoria smiled tightly. "Unfortunately, these things happen. We'll have to make do with recordings." Raj returned to the kitchen, his mind racing. Through the service door, he could see the piano in the next room. Not the massive Steinway from the ballroom, but a different one. Still beautiful and surely worth more than he would make in years. As he helped prepare the dessert course, Raj's fingers tapped rhythmically against the counter. The chef gave him an irritated look and he quickly stopped, embarrassed. But the music in his head wouldn't quiet down. After dessert had been served, Victoria excused herself to use the restroom. As she walked through the hallway, she heard something that made her stop in her tracks. Someone was playing the piano. She followed the sound to the sitting room adjacent to the dining area. Through the doorway, she saw a man in the catering uniform sitting at her piano, his back to her. His fingers moved across the keys with confidence and grace, coaxing out a melody that made her breath catch. It was Debussy's Clair de Lune, one of the first pieces she had mastered as a young girl. But the way this man played it, there was a tenderness, a vulnerability that made the familiar piece sound brand new. Each note hung in the air like a delicate crystal, beautiful and fragile. Victoria stood frozen, afraid to move and break the spell. She didn't recognize the man, though something about him seemed vaguely familiar. A server from the catering company, obviously. But how did he play like that? With more heart than any of the professionally trained musicians she knew? The piece ended, and the man sat still for a moment, his hands resting on the keys. Then, as if suddenly remembering where he was, he stood up quickly and turned around. Their eyes met. Raj looked like a deer caught in headlights, the color draining from his face. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," he stammered. "I shouldn't have touched your piano. I couldn't help myself. I'll go pack my things." He tried to move past her toward the door, but Victoria stepped in his way. "Wait," she said, her voice unusually soft. That was beautiful. Raj stopped, confused. "You're not angry?" "How could I be angry at something that beautiful?" Victoria asked. She studied his face, trying to place where she might have seen him before. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Raj stood frozen, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. Being caught playing a client's expensive piano was surely grounds for firing. He had simply meant to try a few notes while bringing in fresh water pitchers. But once his fingers touched the keys, he couldn't stop himself. "I learned as a child," he finally answered Victoria's question, "but it's been many years since I played regularly." Victoria shook her head in disbelief. "That's not possible. That was extraordinary." Before Raj could respond, they heard voices approaching. Victoria's dinner guests, curious about the music, were making their way toward the sitting room. "Victoria, who was playing?" asked Diane as she entered. Then she spotted Raj in his catering uniform. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. Was it him? More guests filed in, looking between Victoria and the server with confused expressions. Victoria straightened her shoulders, suddenly aware of how strange this situation must appear. "Yes, it seems we had a musician among us all along," she said, her businesswoman's composure returning. "Since our scheduled pianist canceled, perhaps we could convince—" She paused, realizing she didn't know his name. "Raj," he supplied quietly. "Raj Patel. Perhaps Mr. Patel would play something for us?" Victoria finished, though it sounded more like a command than a question. Raj glanced nervously at the catering manager, who had appeared in the doorway with a deep frown. Playing the piano when no one was around was one thing. Performing for Victoria Chen's wealthy guests was quite another. "I'm sorry, but I'm here to work, not perform," Raj said politely but firmly. "I should get back to the kitchen." Victoria was not accustomed to being refused. "I'll pay you," she said. "Double your catering wage for the evening." The catering manager's frown disappeared instantly. "The company would be happy to accommodate Ms. Chen's request," he said, shooting Raj a look that clearly stated he had no choice. Trapped, Raj looked around at the expectant faces of people who normally wouldn't give him a second glance. Part of him wanted to refuse on principle, to not be a performing monkey for the rich. But another part, the part that hadn't truly lived in 15 years, longed to play again on such a beautiful instrument. "One piece," he conceded. Victoria smiled triumphantly and gestured toward the piano. The guests arranged themselves on sofas and chairs, some looking intrigued, others skeptical. No one expected much from a server in a white shirt and black pants. Raj sat down at the piano, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. What should he play? Something flashy to impress them? No, that wasn't who he was. Instead, he decided to play the piece that had stayed with him all these years. The one he was preparing for his conservatory recital when his father died. His fingers found the opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. The piece began softly, almost questioningly, before building in complexity and emotion. As Raj played, he forgot about the audience, forgot about being a server in a billionaire's house, forgot about everything except the music. The room fell completely silent. Victoria stood motionless near the door, watching Raj's transformation. Gone was the hesitant server. In his place sat an artist, his face reflecting every emotion in the music: hope, longing, joy, and heartbreak. The piece moved into its thunderous middle section, Raj's fingers flying across the keys with precision and passion. Several guests leaned forward in their seats, captivated. Victoria felt a strange tightness in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name. When Raj reached the final notes, letting them hang in the air before fading to silence, no one moved or spoke for several seconds. Then the room erupted in applause. People stood, some wiping tears from their eyes. "Bravo!" called out an older gentleman who Victoria knew was a board member of the City Symphony. "Young man, that was world-class playing." Raj stood and gave a small, awkward bow, uncomfortable with the attention. His eyes sought Victoria's, unsure what to do next. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. "That was Chopin's Ballad No. 1, she said, her voice unusually quiet. "It's considered one of the most challenging pieces in the piano repertoire." Raj nodded. "It was the last piece I studied before I had to quit." "Quit?" the symphony board member interjected. "Why would anyone with your talent quit?" Raj's eyes dropped to his hands. "Life happens," he said simply. "Victoria, where did you find him?" asked another guest. "Is this some sort of publicity stunt for your foundation?" Victoria ignored the question, still watching Raj. "Could you play something else?" she asked, and there was an unfamiliar note in her voice that almost sounded like pleading. The catering manager stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Ms. Chen, but we have a schedule to keep. The dessert course needs attention, and we need to begin cleanup soon." Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "I'll pay for overtime. For everyone." She turned to her guests. "Would you all mind giving us the room? Mr. Patel and I need to discuss something." The guests exchanged curious glances but did as she asked, returning to the dining room with fresh gossip about Victoria Chen's strange interest in a server who played piano. When they were alone, Victoria approached the piano. "You play better than anyone I've ever heard," she said frankly. "And I studied at the National Conservatory." Raj's eyes widened slightly. "You're a pianist too." "Was," Victoria corrected. "I chose a different path." She sat on the bench beside him, keeping a careful distance. "What happened to yours?" Raj hesitated, unused to sharing his story with strangers, especially wealthy ones. But something in Victoria's expression seemed genuinely interested. "My father died suddenly when I was 20, he explained. "Heart attack. No warning. My mother got sick from the stress and there was no money. I had a full scholarship to study music, but scholarships don't pay medical bills or rent." He shrugged. "So I left school and found work. 3 jobs usually. Been doing that ever since." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "And you never played again?" "Until tonight. Sometimes at the community center when no one's around. They have an old upright, but nothing like this." His fingers hovered over the keys without touching them. "Nothing serious for 15 years. Victoria looked at him with disbelief. "And yet you just played Chopin like you never stopped." She shook her head. "Do you know how many hours I practiced every day at the conservatory? How many students would kill to have your natural ability?" Raj felt a flash of irritation. "Natural ability doesn't matter much when you're choosing between pursuing music and keeping a roof over your mother's head." Victoria fell silent, properly chastised. She had never had to make such choices. When she left the conservatory, it had been for more money, not survival. From the dining room came the sound of laughter and conversation. Her guests were waiting, but for once Victoria didn't care. "Last week," she said suddenly, "at the charity gala. You were there, weren't you?" "Working?" Raj nodded. "Clearing glasses. And you heard what I said? About the piano challenge?" A small smile touched Raj's lips. Hard to miss. It was quite the announcement. Victoria looked at him intently. "I wasn't serious, you know. It was just to shut everyone up about my love life." "I figured," Raj said. "Rich people say outrageous things all the time without meaning them." Victoria winced at his bluntness. "That's fair," she admitted. "But if I had known someone like you was in the room..." She trailed off, not sure what she was trying to say. A knock at the door interrupted them. The catering manager again. "Mr. Patel, we really need your assistance now." Raj stood up. "Duty calls," he said with a resigned smile. "Thank you for letting me play your piano, Ms. Chen. It was a gift." As he turned to leave, Victoria suddenly reached out and caught his wrist. Both of them looked surprised at the contact. "Wait," she said. What if I helped you? You could play professionally. I have connections, money." Raj gently removed her hand. "I don't need charity, Ms. Chen." "It's not charity," Victoria insisted. "It's an investment in talent." "Real talent, the kind I walked away from." Raj studied her face, trying to understand her motives. "Why would you help a stranger?" Victoria didn't have a ready answer. Why indeed? Was it guilt over her own abandoned talent? Fascination with his raw ability? Or something else entirely? "Because music like yours shouldn't be lost to the world," she finally said. "Think about it." Before Raj could respond, someone called Victoria's name from the dining room. With a last lingering look, she left to rejoin her guests, leaving Raj alone with the piano and a head full of impossible thoughts. The morning after the dinner party, Raj woke to his phone ringing. It was an unknown number and he almost ignored it. But something made him answer. "Hello, Mr. Patel. This is Olivia Harper, Ms. Chen's personal assistant," said a crisp, professional voice. "Ms. Chen would like to meet with you today if possible." Raj sat up in bed, immediately wide awake. "Meet about what?" She didn't share details, only that it's important. "Can you come to our office at 2 p.m.? Raj glanced at his worn calendar on the wall where he tracked all 3 of his jobs. "I work at the office building on 5th Street from 6 to noon, but I'm free after that." "Perfect. I'll send a car to pick you up." "That's not necessary," Raj started to say, but the assistant had already hung up. Raj stared at the phone, wondering what Victoria Chen could possibly want. Their conversation about his music had felt unfinished, but he hadn't actually expected her to follow up. Rich people often made grand gestures in the moment that they forgot about by morning. His mother appeared in the doorway, looking concerned. "Who was calling so early?" "No one, Ma, just work," Raj said, not wanting to get her hopes up about anything. She had always believed in his talent, had cried the day he told her he was giving up music school. "I might be late today. Extra cleaning job." As he rode the bus to his morning shift, Raj replayed the previous night in his head. The feel of the piano keys beneath his fingers, the stunned faces of the guests, and most of all, the strange look in Victoria Chen's eyes as she made her offer. Not pity exactly, but something more complex. At exactly 2 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up outside the office building where Raj had just finished his shift. The driver, a man in a neat uniform, opened the door. "Mr. Patel, I'm here to take you to Ms. Chen's office." Feeling completely out of place in his cleaner's uniform, Raj slid into the luxurious leather seat. 20 minutes later, they arrived at one of the tallest buildings downtown, the headquarters of Victoria's tech empire. The assistant, Olivia, met him in the lobby and escorted him up in a private elevator. Raj tried not to look impressed, but he'd never been this high up in a building before. The elevator opened directly into Victoria's office suite, which was larger than his entire apartment. Victoria was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city. She turned when they entered, and Raj was struck by how different she looked in her business clothes. A tailored suit that probably cost more than his yearly salary, compared to her evening wear last night. "Mr. Patel, thank you for coming," she said. "All business now. Can I offer you something to drink?" "No, thank you," Raj said, remaining standing even though there were several comfortable chairs. "Your assistant said it was important?" Victoria nodded to Olivia, who left the room, closing the door behind her. Once they were alone, Victoria's professional mask slipped a little. "I couldn't stop thinking about your playing," she admitted. "And your situation," Raj stiffened. "I don't need your pity, Ms. Chen." "It's not pity," Victoria said quickly. "It's—" She seemed to struggle for words, unusual for someone so articulate. "It's recognition of something rare and valuable being wasted." She walked to her desk and picked up a folder. "I had my team do some research this morning. You were accepted to the International Conservatory at 20 on a full merit scholarship. Your professors called you exceptional and once in a generation. You were chosen to perform at the Young Artist Showcase before you withdrew." Raj felt his face grow warm with a mix of embarrassment and anger. "You investigated me?" "I investigate all potential investments thoroughly," Victoria said, then winced at her own choice of words. "That came out wrong." "No, it's exactly right," Raj said coolly. "You see a potential asset. Something to add to your portfolio. The server who plays piano, what a novelty. Victoria set down the folder looking genuinely distressed. That's not fair. I'm trying to help. Why? Raj asked bluntly. You don't know me. We're from completely different worlds. What do you get out of this? Victoria turned back to the window, silent for a long moment. When I was at the conservatory, she finally said, I was good. Very good, but not like you. I had technical skill, but not... She made a vague gesture with her hand. Not that quality that makes people feel something. I knew it even then. She turned to face him again. When the opportunity came to start my tech company, I told myself I was being practical, that I was choosing a more secure future, but the truth was I knew I'd never be truly great as a pianist. So this is about you, not me, Raj said, but his tone had softened. Victoria shook her head. It's about music. Real music. What you played last night, it deserves to be heard. She walked closer to him. I want to sponsor you. Pay for you to train with the best teachers, arrange auditions, cover your living expenses so you don't have to work 3 jobs. Raj laughed without humor. And my mother's medical bills? The rent, her medications? All of it, Victoria said simply. A complete package. Raj felt dizzy. It was everything he'd ever wanted and had forced himself to stop dreaming about. What's the catch? What do you want in return? Victoria looked surprised by the question. Nothing. Well, maybe tickets to your first concert, she added with a small smile. There must be something, Raj insisted. People like Victoria Chen didn't give away small fortunes for nothing. Victoria hesitated, then said, maybe it's selfish, but I want to be part of bringing this music into the world. Music I couldn't create myself. Raj studied her face, looking for signs of deception, but found none. Still, it felt too easy. Too much like a fairy tale. I need time to think. Of course, Victoria said. Take all the time you need. As Raj turned to leave, a thought struck him. The piano challenge, he said, at the charity event. You said if anyone could play and move you to tears, you'd marry them on the spot. Victoria's cheeks colored slightly. That was just a joke to shut my friends up. But I did, didn't I? Move you to tears. Victoria touched her face as if checking for evidence. I suppose you did. So where's my marriage proposal? Raj asked with unexpected boldness, surprising them both. For once, Victoria Chen looked completely flustered. That wasn't... Raj smiled, enjoying seeing the always composed billionaire at a loss for words. I'm kidding, Miss Chen. I have no interest in being anyone's trophy husband. Victoria recovered, returning his smile. Good, because I have no interest in a marriage of obligation. The moment stretched between them, something unspoken passing in the air. I should go, Raj finally said. My evening shift starts soon. Think about my offer, Victoria reminded him. Raj nodded. I will. That night after his shift ended, Raj walked to his mother's bedroom. She was sitting up in bed, knitting. Ma, something happened, he said, sitting beside her. He told her everything, playing at Victoria's house, her offer, the possibility of returning to music. His mother's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Beta, this is what I've prayed for. That someone would see your gift again. It feels wrong, Raj confessed. Taking charity. And what if I fail? It's been 15 years. His mother took his hands in hers, feeling the calluses that had replaced the pianist's hands he once had. This is not failure, she said firmly. This is your chance to live, not just survive. The next morning, Raj called the number Olivia had given him. But instead of accepting Victoria's offer, he proposed an alternative. I want to do this on my terms, he told her. Not as your charity case. 3 days later, they met at a small coffee shop, neutral territory. Victoria arrived without her usual entourage, dressed more casually than Raj had seen her before. I've thought about your counteroffer, she said after they'd settled with their drinks. A loan instead of a gift to be repaid once you're established. Raj nodded. With interest. Business terms, not charity. And you'll keep your apartment instead of moving to the building I suggested. Yes. And my mother keeps her doctors. Not the fancy specialist you recommended. Victoria sipped her coffee, studying him. You're very stubborn. I prefer independent, Raj replied. Fine, Victoria conceded. But you have to agree to the best piano teachers. That's non-negotiable. And you practice full-time, no more cleaning jobs. Agreed, Raj said. After a pause, he added, Why are you really doing this? Victoria looked into her coffee cup as if it might contain the answer. The night I heard you play, it was the first time in years I felt something real. In my world, everything is calculated, measured for its return on investment. She looked up at him. But music like yours can't be measured that way. It just matters. Raj considered this. And if I fail? If 15 years away from music is too long? Victoria smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I'm a businesswoman, Mr. Patel. I never bet on failure. As they shook hands on their agreement, neither of them noticed a woman at a nearby table quietly recording their conversation on her phone. By evening, the story of the billionaire and the janitor pianist would begin spreading across social media, taking on a life of its own. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of change. The video of Victoria and Raj in the coffee shop had gone viral overnight, with millions of views and thousands of comments. People loved the story, the billionaire tech CEO and the janitor with hidden musical genius. It was like something from a movie, too perfect to be real. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others spun romantic fantasies about true love crossing social boundaries. The gossip sites had a field day with headlines like Billionaire's Piano Challenge finds unexpected winner, and From Cleaning Floors to Concert Halls, Tech Queen's new project. Through it all, Raj kept his head down and focused on what mattered, the music. With Victoria's backing, he had started intensive training with one of the country's top piano instructors. His hands, once roughened by cleaning chemicals and manual labor, slowly regained their former sensitivity. Hours of daily practice rebuilt his strength and technique. Victoria had kept her distance at first, allowing Raj to focus on his training without distraction. She received weekly updates from his teacher, but respected the boundaries they had established. This wasn't about her. It was about the music. Now on a crisp autumn evening, Raj sat backstage at the city's most prestigious concert hall, his heart pounding in his chest. Tonight was his debut performance, a small recital for invited guests, music critics and representatives from the recording industry. 5 minutes, Mr. Patel, a stagehand said, poking his head into the green room. Raj nodded, adjusting the sleeves of his new suit. It felt strange wearing clothes this expensive, but Victoria had insisted. You need to look the part, she'd said when she arranged for the fitting. A soft knock on the door made him turn. Victoria stood there, elegant in a simple black dress, her usual confidence somehow muted. May I come in? She asked. Raj gestured to the chair across from him. Of course, Victoria sat, smoothing her dress. How are you feeling? Terrified, Raj admitted with a small laugh. I never thought I'd be here. 6 months ago, I was cleaning office buildings and serving appetizers. And playing Chopin like you were born for it, Victoria added. Raj looked at his hands. I keep waiting to wake up from this dream. It's not a dream, Victoria said. You earned this. Every hour of practice, every sacrifice. In the past months, they had developed a cautious friendship. Victoria had surprised Raj by being true to her word. She was an investor in his career, not a controller of it. She had opinions, of course, but she respected his decisions about his musical direction. And somewhere along the way, they had started to see past each other's surface. Your mother is in the front row, Victoria said. Dr. Lee says her treatment is going well. Raj smiled gratefully. Although he had refused Victoria's offer to pay for fancy specialists, she had quietly arranged consultations with top doctors who recommended a new treatment covered by his mother's insurance. It was the kind of thoughtful gesture that had slowly changed his perception of her. Thank you, he said simply, for everything. Victoria shook her head. Don't thank me yet. The critics are sharks, and they're waiting to see if you're the real deal or just a social media sensation. She hesitated, then added, Some think this is all a calculated move on my part, social cause marketing for my company or some sort of publicity stunt. Is it? Raj asked. It was a question that had lingered between them, though he had never asked it directly until now. Victoria met his eyes. You know it's not, the stagehand returned. Time, Mr. Patel. Victoria stood. I should go to my seat. She paused at the door. Play for yourself tonight. Not for the critics, not for me, not for anyone else. Just for the music. Raj nodded, taking a deep breath as he prepared to step onto the stage. The lights were blinding as he walked to the grand piano. The audience applauded politely, though he could sense their curiosity and skepticism. The janitor pianist, was he really worth all this fuss? As he settled on the bench, Raj caught sight of his mother in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. Beside her sat Victoria, her face carefully composed, though he could see the tension in her shoulders. Raj closed his eyes, took one more breath, and began to play. He had chosen Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 to open his program. The piece began softly, building gradually in intensity and emotion. As his fingers moved across the keys, the months of intensive training paid off. His technique was solid, but it was the feeling behind the notes that made the audience lean forward in their seats. He played with his whole heart, letting the music speak of loss and redemption, of dreams deferred and found again. In those moments, he forgot about the critics, the gossip, the strange journey that had brought him here. There was only the music, the conversation between his soul and the piano. When he finished the piece, there was a moment of perfect silence before the hall erupted in applause. Raj looked up, slightly dazed, to see several people on their feet. His mother was openly crying. And Victoria. Victoria was staring at him with that same intense look she'd had the first night she heard him play, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The rest of the recital passed in a blur. Raj played pieces by Chopin, Debussy, and Bach, finishing with an original composition he had written during his months of training. When he played the final note of his own piece, a hopeful, resolute chord that seemed to hang in the air, the audience rose as one in a standing ovation. Backstage after the performance, Raj was surrounded by people offering congratulations and business cards. Music directors, recording executives, agents, all wanting a piece of the night's success. Hours later, when the crowd had finally dispersed, Raj found Victoria waiting in the empty green room. "You did it," she said simply. "We did it," he corrected her. "I wouldn't be here without you." Victoria shook her head. "No, this was all you. I just removed the obstacles." They walked together to the now empty concert hall. The cleaning crew had finished and the space was quiet and still. Victoria led the way to the piano on the stage. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the bench. Raj nodded, curious. Victoria sat and placed her hands on the keys, playing the opening of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Her technique was flawless, as he had expected, but there was something different in her playing now, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. She stopped after a few measures. "I've been practicing again," she admitted. "Watching you reconnect with music made me realize how much I missed it." Raj sat beside her on the bench, careful to leave space between them. "You play beautifully. Technically, yes. But I still don't have what you have." She looked at him. "That's why I made that ridiculous challenge at the charity event, you know. Deep down, I think I was hoping someone would show me what I was missing." Raj smiled. "About that challenge," Victoria laughed softly. "Are you going to hold me to it? Demand that I marry you because you moved me to tears?" "No," Raj said seriously. "I would never want someone to marry me because of a promise or obligation." He hesitated, then added quietly, "If it ever happened, it should be because of something else entirely." Their eyes met, acknowledging the unspoken feeling that had been growing between them, a connection that went beyond music or business arrangements. "My first recording session is next week," Raj said, breaking the moment. "And there's talk of a small tour next spring." "I know," Victoria said. "Your agent keeps me updated. Part of our business agreement, remember?" They smiled at each other, both aware of how far they had come from that first meeting. "What happens now?" Raj asked. Victoria touched a piano key lightly, the soft note hanging between them. "Now we see where the music takes us. No challenges, no promises, no arrangements. Just two people finding their way." "I'd like that," Raj said. As they left the concert hall together, neither of them knew exactly what the future held, but they both understood that sometimes the most beautiful compositions come from unexpected beginnings. Like a billionaire's mocking challenge and a janitor who played like a professional. Their story, like the best music, would unfold in its own time, with its own unique harmony.